Hey there! Welcome to the Healthy Mind channel, where I share true stories packed with surprising turns. If you like what you hear in this video, please hit that subscribe button and give it a thumbs up. It really helps keep our little corner of YouTube growing. Alright, let's jump into the story. I'm Mike, just 24 years old, and I've finally struck out on my own for the first time. No roommates, no family hovering over me, just me. A rundown old house I stumbled across on a rental website, and a 6-month lease that's stretching my bank account to its limits. I grew up in a cramped house, sharing space with 3 siblings and 2 parents who always had good intentions, but rarely took the time to hear me out. They were the type who'd map out my future before I could even dream up my own path, always saying things like trades were a safe bet, my ideas were a waste of money, or I was too young to know what I wanted. Maybe they had a point on some stuff, but I was desperate for room to breathe, to carve out my own successes or crash and burn on my terms. So, I hustled like crazy for nearly a year, picking up odd jobs, delivery runs, construction work, anything that paid, saving every penny I could scrape together. Eventually, I found this listing for a small, weathered house about 45 minutes outside town. It wasn't much to look at: peeling paint, a strange whiff in the hallway, kitchen cabinets barely clinging to the walls. But it was mine, at least for half a year. For the first time ever, I could shut the door and not hear chaos from the next room. Just sweet, uninterrupted quiet. That first week was a mess. No Wi-Fi for 4 days, half the outlets dead, and a spider the size of my fist in the bathtub that I had to deal with. But the freedom made every hassle worth it. I'd crash on an old mattress on the floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes, yet feel more at peace than I ever did in my childhood bedroom back home. I didn't know a soul in the neighborhood, and at first, I was fine with that. I wasn't here to make buddies, just to figure out what I wanted from life. I had big dreams, like maybe starting my own business, but no clue where to begin, no degree, no connections, just a stubborn gut feeling that I could build something if I had the space to try. Then, a few days after settling in, I met her while I was outside wrestling with a broken fence panel, swinging a hammer way too small for the job, probably looking like a total goof. This woman strolled up, tall with kind eyes and brown hair that hid her shoulders, holding out a power drill with a slight grin, asking if I needed a real tool. I was caught off guard but chuckled, admitting my hammer wasn't doing the trick. Her name was Lillian, 38, divorced, with a 9-year-old son named Daniel, and she lived next door, having spotted my struggle from her window. We got to chatting, and she had this calm, confident vibe, like someone who'd figured life out. She shared that her ex bailed when she got pregnant, leaving her to raise Daniel solo. She didn't dwell on him, and I didn't pry, but it was clear she'd been through a lot. She'd worked 2 jobs in the beginning, even lived in her car for a stretch when things hit rock bottom, but now she ran a small online store and had finally found some stability. Talking to her felt natural, like we clicked without trying. She didn't lecture me or act superior, just listened, really listened. When she spoke about her struggles, it wasn't whining. It was pride in what she'd overcome, and that hit me deep. Over the next couple of weeks, we kept crossing paths. She'd swing by with leftovers. I'd help lug her groceries, and Daniel would pop over, asking if I had any cool video games. I started looking forward to seeing them. Out here, they were my only real connection, and it felt good, like a little piece of home I didn't know I needed. One night, I was chilling on my porch, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, watching the sunset paint the trees gold, when Lillian came over and just sat beside me, quiet at first. Then she said I reminded her of herself when she was starting over, and I didn't know if that was a compliment or a heads up about how tough it might get. I admitted I was just winging it, and she smiled, saying nobody really has it figured out. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about how much my life had already changed. In just 10 days, I'd gone from crashing on a friend's couch, feeling like a kid, to having my own place and a neighbor who believed in me more than my folks ever did. Maybe even the start of something new. One Saturday morning, Lillian showed up at my door with 2 mugs of coffee. No heads up, just a gentle knock and a playful comment about hoping I wasn't useless without caffeine. I wasn't, but I welcomed her in, and she plopped down at my rickety kitchen table, glancing around at the half-fixed chaos of my house, saying it already looked better than when the last tenant was here. a small nod of approval that meant a lot. We talked for nearly 3 hours that morning. I gave her the quick rundown on my strict parents and their endless rules, how I always felt stifled. She got it, nodding like she'd been there, then opened up about her own story. No fluff, just the raw truth. She was 27 when she got pregnant, and Daniel's dad freaked out, saying he wasn't ready, then vanished, leaving her with no savings, no plan, and no one to lean on. Her parents were long gone. Her only sibling lived across the country, and she worked nights waiting tables while pregnant, then cleaned houses by day after Daniel was born. When Daniel was 6 months old, she lost her apartment and spent 6 weeks living in her car with a baby, parking outside an early opening diner, bundling up in blankets in the back seat until it was light enough to go inside without drawing stares. I just sat there, taking it all in, floored by her strength. Eventually, someone gave her a break, offering a job managing online orders for a local shop, and that's how she learned the ropes of e-commerce. A year later, she started her own online store, candles, home goods, small stuff, but it was enough to keep going. Daniel grew up, they rented this house, and she started feeling like life might finally be steady. Listening to her, something clicked in me. I'd moved here thinking I was bold, leaving home to start fresh, but her story put mine in perspective. Lillian had faced incredible challenges, raising a baby on her own, and not only did she pull through, she created something meaningful from scratch. After our long talk that morning, we started hanging out more often, not every single day, but enough to feel like a routine was forming. We'd bump into each other while hauling in groceries or checking the mailbox, and her son Daniel would ride over on his bike, asking if I was up for a quick game of basketball. I usually agreed, happy to shoot hoops with him, and I began asking Lillian for advice on starting a business, even though I had no clear product, service, or even a solid idea, just a burning desire to build something worthwhile. She never made me feel foolish for being clueless. Instead, she'd offer simple wisdom like, start with something small, and don't wait for someone to give you the green light. One afternoon, I mentioned I was thinking about making custom wooden shelves, since I had some basic tools and a bit of know-how from construction gigs. She gave me a playful look and asked if I could even cut a straight line, and when I nodded, she shrugged and said, "Give it a shot. If it's no good, no one's got to know." It was refreshing to hear someone older than me cheer on the idea of taking a risk instead of nudging me toward something safer. One evening, Daniel invited me over for dinner, and Lillian cooked a big pot of pasta that we all shared around their cozy dining table, chuckling about how Daniel had procrastinated on his science project until the very last minute. Sitting there felt so normal, almost like I'd found a place where I fit, like a little family I hadn't expected to find. I caught myself stealing glances at Lillian when she laughed, noticing how she'd tuck her hair behind her ear when she was deep in thought, or the way her eyes lit up with love and pride when she looked at Daniel, like he was her whole world, her reason for every battle she'd fought. Later that night, back at my place, I sank onto my couch in the dark, letting my thoughts wander over everything. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I was drawn to her, and not just because she was beautiful, though she definitely was. It was deeper than that. She was authentic, someone who'd walked through tough times and come out tougher, with a sense of purpose and strength I envied. I started wondering what she could possibly see in me. Just a 24-year-old with a scruffy beard and a fence that was still half broken. No career, no clear path. Unsure if I wanted to make shelves or maybe start a YouTube channel. But every time we talked, she looked at me like I was someone who mattered, not just some aimless kid trying to find his way. One night that really stuck with me. We were sitting on her porch after Daniel had gone to bed, the quiet broken only by the chirping cicadas and the faint hum of a neighbor's TV drifting through an open window. Lillian admitted she didn't usually let people get close, not just into her house, but into her life. But with me, she felt at ease, like I was someone she could just be herself around. I fumbled for words, blurting out that she was kind of incredible, and she gave a small, bittersweet smile, saying it took her years to believe that about herself. Doubt crept in, and I confessed I wasn't sure I was the kind of person who deserved to be around someone like her, that I wasn't stable, that I was still figuring out my life, even half joking that I was too young for her. She paused, then flashed a genuine smile, the kind that crinkled her eyes, and said my youth was exactly what she liked about me. I was speechless, my brain scrambling to process what she'd said, and that night, I barely slept, not out of fear or confusion, but because I felt something real taking shape, something new and exciting, and I was eager to see where it might go. The next morning, everything felt different as I stood in my kitchen, predictably burning my toast, replaying her words in my head 100 times. "That's exactly why I like you." Her voice had been steady, certain, like she'd been thinking it for a while and finally let it out. And it wasn't just a casual comment. It carried weight. I wasn't sure how to act around her now, whether to pretend nothing had changed or to say something bold, but I didn't have much time to overthink it. Around noon, Lillian knocked on my door, holding a basket of fresh laundry, saying she was doing a load anyway and figured she'd help out since my dryer was still busted. I grinned, mumbling a thanks and admitting I'd scorched my toast again, and she laughed, calling me hopeless in that warm, teasing way of hers. She walked in like it was the most natural thing, and we sat on my couch, chatting for over an hour about nothing too serious, just easy, comfortable small talk. She mentioned she was working on a new line of custom-scented candles for her online store, and I shared that I'd finally ordered some proper woodworking tools, thinking I might try selling handmade shelves at the local farmer's market. She loved the idea, encouraging me to test it out at the weekend market in town. Somewhere in the middle of talking about candles and shelf brackets, I gathered the courage to ask if she meant what she said the night before, about liking me because I'm young. Without missing a beat, she smiled that same crinkly-eyed smile and said she liked how I saw the world, like every possibility was still wide open. I admitted that most people would say I'm not ready, that I'm clueless about what I'm doing, and she laughed, agreeing I didn't have it all figured out, but adding that neither did she when she started over, and that my time was a gift I shouldn't waste. Then she reached over and lightly touched my hand, not in some big, dramatic way, but enough to make my whole body freeze for a second, saying softly that she saw me, not as a kid, but as someone real, and that I shouldn't let our age difference scare me off. That night, I took a walk around the block to clear my head, passing by her house where the lights were still on, catching a glimpse of her in the kitchen helping Daniel with his homework, smiling, being the incredible mom and provider she was. There I was, 24, with no steady job, no solid plan, no roots to speak of, and while I wasn't intimidated by her, I admired her so much it made me feel small, like I hadn't yet earned a place in the kind of life she'd built. The next day, Daniel showed up at my door, saying his mom told him I was making shelves now and asking if he could help out. Daniel and I spent hours in the garage, sanding down a couple of rough wooden planks, turning the task into a fun project. He was full of energy, chatting nonstop, and smarter than I'd given him credit for, his quick wit catching me off guard. At one point, while wiping sawdust off his hands, he looked up and said I was cool, not like most adults, which made me chuckle and thank him, though I wasn't sure what to make of it. Then he grinned and added that I felt like an older brother, and that comment hit me deeper than I expected, stirring feelings I hadn't realized were there. Later that week, Lillian invited me to join them for a picnic at a park just outside town, packing a spread of sandwiches, drinks, and snacks, everything thoughtfully prepared. We spread a blanket under a big oak tree, and while Daniel ran around kicking a soccer ball, Lillian and I sat and talked, the moment feeling easy and warm. During that picnic, it sank in how much trust she placed in me, not just with her time or space, but with Daniel, letting me into their world in a way that felt profound. As the sun began to sink behind the trees, casting a golden glow, we sat close, watching Daniel chase butterflies across the grass, and I turned to her, asking if she was ever nervous about what was growing between us, about what people might say. She looked at me with a steady, unshaken gaze, saying she'd already faced poverty, abandonment, judgment, and feeling invisible, so other people's opinions didn't faze her anymore. I hesitated, admitting I wasn't sure I was ready to step into roles like being a father figure, a partner, or a man in such a serious setup. She nodded, glancing at the grass, and said I didn't need to have it all figured out right away, but if it was something I wanted, we could navigate it together. That was the thing. I did want it, the laughter, the quiet coffee moments on the porch, the sense of belonging. But what scared me wasn't commitment. It was the fear of failing at something that truly mattered. That night, instead of heading home, I lingered on her porch, staring up at the stars, my mind racing about how I'd ended up in this moment. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, her face showed no surprise, like she'd known I'd come back, and I admitted I didn't know where this was going, but I wanted to give it a try. She welcomed me inside with a quiet warmth. No need for grand gestures, just two people with different pasts and ages, but maybe walking the same path now. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to prove myself. I just had to show up. Over the next few weeks, time seemed to slow, like the world had settled into a gentler rhythm. Things with Lillian didn't turn into some dramatic, movie-like romance with swelling music or big gestures. It was just us, spending more time together with purpose, without labeling what we were. Daniel got used to me being around, sometimes knocking on my door to toss a football or Lillian texting me to come over for dinner. And it all felt so natural, like this rhythm had always been part of my life, just waiting for me to find it. Still, beneath it all, there was a quiet tug in my chest, a nagging uncertainty about whether I was building something real or just playing a role I wasn't ready for, questioning if I even deserved this. One afternoon, I was in the garage, working on my third attempt at a wooden shelf, the first one too crooked, the second ruined by drilling too fast. But this one was coming together, smooth, sturdy, something I was actually proud of. Lillian stopped by around sunset, holding 2 glasses of lemonade, leaning against the garage doorway as I sanded the edges, commenting that the shelf looked solid. I shrugged, saying it wasn't bad for a work in progress, still learning the ropes. She handed me a drink and watched me work for a moment, and out of nowhere, I asked if she ever felt like she was pretending to be something she wasn't. She paused, then admitted she used to feel that way all the time, sharing how she'd put on makeup before walking Daniel to school, not because she wanted to, but to avoid judgment, to prove she was a good mom. I nodded, confessing I felt like I was pretending now, like I wasn't sure I was enough for her or Daniel, worried I'd let them down. She stepped closer, standing right in front of me, and said we'd figure out together if that happened, her eyes full of certainty, not expecting perfection, but believing in me anyway. That night, she invited me over for dinner again, spaghetti, with Daniel insisting on grating the cheese himself, though half of it ended up on the floor, making us all laugh. After dinner, Lillian and I sat in her backyard while Daniel watched a movie inside, the quiet night lit by a soft porch light and the gentle glow of fireflies, everything feeling calm and still. She turned to me and asked if I missed home, and after thinking it over, I said I didn't miss the house or the town, but sometimes I missed the version of myself that wasn't weighed down by doubt. She pointed out that kids believe anything is possible, but life tests that belief, and I was still in the middle of that test. I admitted I felt like I was failing sometimes, but she took my hand, her voice soft and steady, saying I wasn't failing, and the way she said it carried a weight I couldn't quite grasp but felt deeply. Later that week, I helped her at the farmer's market where she sold her candles. Just a simple setup, with a fold-out table and a few display shelves. But she had loyal customers who stopped by to ask about new scents or reorder favorites. Some complimented her setup, smiling at me like I was part of her world, and we made small talk, sold a decent amount, and packed up as the day wound down. On the drive back, she glanced over and said I'd been great out there, and when I brushed it off, saying I didn't do much, she insisted that just being present mattered more than I realized. I looked at her, tired but strong, her hair pulled back, smiling in that quiet, steady way, and I thought maybe that's what I wanted to be. Not flashy or wildly successful, but reliable, steady present. The doubts didn't vanish, but they grew quieter, less overwhelming. That weekend, Daniel showed up at my door, asking if he could help build a model rocket for a school project, and as we worked in the garage, he chattered about a classmate who got in trouble for sneaking candy, his excitement making the moment feel light and real. As Daniel and I finished sanding the model rocket in the garage, I corrected his measurements a few times, guiding him gently to get it just right. When we stepped back to admire our work, he beamed, saying his mom would be thrilled with how it turned out. I agreed, telling him he'd done an awesome job, proud of his effort. He looked up at me with a serious expression, asking if I'd stick around, like for the long haul, maybe next year or beyond. His question caught me off guard, and I crouched down to meet his eyes, admitting I wasn't sure exactly what the future held, but that I wanted to be there. He nodded, satisfied with my honesty, and darted inside to show Lillian the rocket, his excitement lighting up the moment. That night, Lillian and I lounged on her couch, a movie playing softly on the TV, though neither of us paid much attention, too comfortable in the quiet. I glanced at her, noticing the faint lines near her eyes and how she tucked her feet under herself, cozy and at ease, and without thinking, I blurted out that I thought I was falling for her. She didn't seem surprised, just turned to me with a calm warmth, saying to go ahead and fall, her words simple but carrying a weight that felt right. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was the kind that felt complete, like everything was okay as it was. I barely slept that night, not from worry, but because I felt like I was finally building something real, something that mattered. 7 months have passed since I moved into that creaky, run-down rental house, and if you told me back then I'd end up here, in the backyard watching Daniel chase a soccer ball while Lillian sips lemonade beside me, I'd have thought you were joking. But this is my life now, and it's not just by chance anymore. I'm choosing it every day. A few weeks after that night on the couch, when I admitted my feelings and she responded so simply, things between us shifted, not with some big, dramatic flourish, but in a quiet, honest way. We didn't start throwing around labels like boyfriend or girlfriend or talking about forever. We just started living life together, side by side. I began waking up early, not because I had to, but because I wanted to help Daniel get ready for school, packing his lunch while Lillian made breakfast. He teased me for always forgetting the napkin, and he was right, I always did. I kept working on my wooden shelves, getting better with each one, and Lillian helped me set up a simple website to showcase them. We started running a booth together at the farmer's market every weekend, some days slow, others surprisingly busy, and when a woman asked if I took custom orders, I said yes, even though I had no clue how to make what she wanted. I figured it out later. Lillian's candle business kept growing, too, with orders now shipping out of state, and I pitched in with packing and logistics, working together at night, sometimes in comfortable silence, sometimes with soft music playing in the background. It felt peaceful, like we were building something real together, no rush, no pressure for perfection, just progress. Daniel started calling me at first, then Mike, and one day, when he scraped his knee falling off his bike, he asked for me, not his mom, saying he wanted Mike, and that moment hit me hard, showing me I was in deeper than I'd realized, and I wanted to be. A month later, Lillian and I sat down after Daniel went to bed, finally having the talk we both knew was coming, about what we were to each other. As she folded laundry, her eyes on a pair of Daniel's tiny socks, she said we were a family, a strange, beautiful, unexpected one, but a family nonetheless. I nodded, realizing the word family no longer scared me. It felt right, like a truth I'd grown into. She reached across the couch, took my hand, and said she wanted me here, wanted this life we were building, and I told her I wasn't going anywhere. After that, we made some changes. I officially moved into her place, though I kept paying rent on my house until the lease ended, moving all my stuff into hers. I turned part of her garage into a small workshop, and Daniel helped paint the walls, adding a crooked sign that read T's Shop, which still hangs there, a little reminder of him. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were nights I doubted myself, days I felt like I wasn't pulling my weight, especially since my shelves weren't bringing in real money yet. But Lillian kept reminding me that building something worthwhile takes time, and she'd know. She'd lived it, starting over with nothing. Sometimes, after Daniel was asleep, we'd sit on the porch, sipping tea, not saying much, and every so often, she'd look at me and say I was doing better than I thought, her words sinking in deeper each time. She started introducing me as her partner to people, and I liked how it sounded, like I was earning my place in her life, not just occupying it. One evening, as we sat at the kitchen table going over an order list for her candles, with Daniel playing video games in the next room, she looked up from her laptop and said she liked that I didn't try to fix everything, just showed up. That stuck with me. It wasn't about being a hero or having all the answers. It was about being there, steady and real, and over time, I started to become that, not just for her and Daniel, but for myself. We talked about the future, not in grand, storybook terms, but in practical, everyday ways, like how we'd manage Daniel's middle school schedule or where we might live when her lease was up. When she asked if I'd ever want kids of my own, I said yes, someday, and she smiled, her eyes warm with understanding. One night, Daniel came into our room holding a drawing he'd made at school. 3 stick figures, a tall woman, a medium-sized guy with a beard, and a kid in a red shirt, labeled as us. Lillian and I exchanged a look, and in that quiet moment, we both knew we'd become something lasting, not because we planned every step, but because we let it grow naturally. Just last week, I was in my garage workshop, sanding a new custom shelf, the sun setting outside, when Lillian walked in with a glass of water, smiling at me in that familiar, steady way. She said I'd changed a lot, and when I asked if it was for better or worse, she called me stronger, more grounded, still young but no longer unsure. I thought about her words long after she went inside, because she was right. I'm still young, but I'm not lost anymore. I'm not just trying to prove something to my parents or chasing some vague idea of independence. I'm building a real life with people who matter to me. I never expected to find love with a 38-year-old single mom, to help raise her son, to start a business alongside her, or to feel like this little rented house was home. But that's exactly what happened, and it's more than I could have imagined.